you're about to drink some water, do you ever think about whether or not it's clean?
No, I've never thought about it.
I'm sure it's clean. No problem.
Only to a certain extent. Say, in Ma On Shan, there is sand in the water. In some districts, the water is poor in quality.
Drinking water is sometimes clean, but sometimes it isn't.
We say that drinking water is purified if it has been treated by the treatment works. A person needs about 120 litres of purified drinking water daily. How can this water be considered clean? According to the Water Supplies Department, drinking water in a modern city should be clear, odourless, wholesome and bacteria-free. Here is a glass of river water. Is it good enough for drinking? Does it meet the criteria of the Water Supplies Department for being clear, odourless, wholesome and bacteria-free?
Of course it isn't. River water might contain sand and other solid particles, as well as lots of invisible living things, organic matter and inorganic substances. The water filtered here, before it is supplied to users, has to be randomly sampled and tested to ensure that it meets the standards of the World Health Organization. For instance, we would use gas chromatography to calculate the trihalomethane content. We use an atomic absorption spectrometer to determine the level of heavy metallic ions. We use titration to measure hardness. And membrane filtration allows us to estimate the amount of E. coli. A total of over 100 parameters have to be maintained, and all of them have to meet the standards laid down by the World Health Organization. Then, the water is considered suitable for human consumption.
In 1892, a strange event happened in two German cities, Hamburg and Altona, on opposite banks of the River Elbe. People of both cities drank from the river. In Hamburg, people led a happy life. Everybody drank from the river and lived peacefully. Until one day.
Oh, I've got a sore belly. Me too.
We do as well.
In a short while, many citizens complained that they had a sore belly. Later they died. What's strange was that on the opposite bank, people in Altona were fine, though they also drank from the same River Elbe. What was the reason? The mayor of Hamburg immediately sent agents to Altona to investigate, and they discovered the secret. It turned out that although people in Altona also drank water from the River Elbe, they filtered it before drinking. Later, it was found that the cause of death among the people in Hamburg was that the water was contaminated with cholera bacteria. Hamburg started to filter its water before supplying it to its citizens. What a disaster it would be if we didn't have water filtered before drinking. It's fortunate that we have water treatment works here in Hong Kong. It's much more hygienic to drink filtered water. Drinking water in Hong Kong comes from two main sources. rainwater collected from upland catchment areas of local reservoirs, and river water from the Dongjang River in Guangdong Province. Water collected from streams and rivers is known as natural water, whereas water from the tap is called drinking water. According to the Water Supplies Department, the quality of drinking water from sources inside the SAR is quite good, as the catchment areas are located upland, where pollution from human activities is kept to a minimum. Moreover, particles in the water settle as the water runs from its source into reservoirs. Aeration and direct sunlight also result in purification. The role of the water treatment works is to convert natural water into drinking water. As early as 1939, with the exception of the Shusong Hill area, the water supply to the people on Hong Kong Island and in the urban areas of Kowloon was filtered. Nowadays, there are many water treatment works in the SAR. Among these, Sha Tin Treatment Works is the largest. Let's take a helicopter ride for an aerial view of it. Here is Sha Tin Treatment Works. Viewed from above, there are two types of pools of different shapes. There are about 10 big round pools, which look like the tires of a car, with horizontal lines on the inside. The remaining pools are rectangular. There are several dozens of this type. The water treatment process is quite simple. Staff of the treatment works use the name raw water for natural water. Raw water from different sources passes through tunnels and enters the plant. To facilitate the treatment process, several chemicals are added. The water with chemicals then goes into this big round pool called a clarifier, which is used for the settlement of large, solid particles. After passing through the clarifier, water then goes into this rectangular pool called a filter, where finer particles are filtered. Finally, with the addition of some more chemicals, the water is ready for human consumption. Raw water comes from 5 different sources: the Dongjang River in Guangdong Province, High Island Reservoir, Plover Cove Reservoir, Lower Xingmen Reservoir, and many upland catchment areas. At this stage, 3 types of chemicals are added to the water. They are hydrated lime, alum, and chlorine. The white liquid dripping into the water is hydrated lime solution. It is used to regulate the pH level of raw water so as to facilitate the following treatment process. The second chemical added is alum. Alum is a chemical called aluminium sulfate. When it is added into water, it helps suspended particles to coagulate into large lumps, which can easily settle onto the floor of the clarifiers. The third chemical added is chlorine. A chlorine solution is pumped in through these 2 tubes. As chlorine is toxic, it has to be contained in sealed tubes and injected into water. Why is it necessary to add a small amount of toxic chlorine? It is for preliminary disinfection and clearance of algal outgrowth in the pipelines during the water treatment process. The water treated with chemicals then flows within the pipelines underneath this route and drains into the clarifiers for settlement of suspended water. Let's take a look at the structure of this clarifier. There are 2 pipelines on the bottom. The thicker one is the inlet for the treated raw water, whereas the thinner one is for the injection of polyelectrolyte. What is the use of polyelectrolyte? Polyelectrolyte is a mixture of many positively and negatively charged particles which attract one another. When the polyelectrolyte is added into water, this attraction among the particles leads to the formation of suspended solids that settle on the bottom. Take a look at the center of the clarifier. There are many revolving wheels. The turning of the wheels helps the suspended particles to coagulate into solids, which settle onto the floor in the form of sludge. This big blue frame also turns round the clarifier slowly. There is a scraper panel underneath the frame. When the frame revolves, the scraper panel scrapes up the sludge on the bottom and pushes it into the sludge tunnels. Finally, the treated water is sent to the water collecting channels. While suspended particles are settling in the clarifiers, the clear water flows on top and passes through these little holes into collecting channels. Water collected in the channels is then led to the filter for filtration. Let's start up every part of the clarifier. The entire clarification process proceeds in this way. With chemicals added, raw water flows into the clarifiers. Alum and polyelectrolyte in the water helps suspended particles to coagulate into larger lumps. The movement of the revolving wheels helps the suspended particles and coagulated lumps stick together. The heavy lumps settle on the bottom. As the blue frame slowly revolves round the clarifier, the scraper panel underneath scrapes up the sludge on the bottom and pushes it into sludge tunnels. The clear water on the surface flows through the holes into collecting channels and is then led to the filter for filtration. Finally, we arrive at the filter. Its main function is to filter the finer particles that remain suspended in water after the clarification process. After clarification, water flows into the filter and gathers here. It's called the filter bed. The filter bed is composed of several layers. From the top downward are the layers of anthracite, sand, and gravel. This is a model of the filter bed. There is a layer of anthracite on top. Below it are layers of fine sand, coarse sand, and gravel. The anthracite particles are 1.2 millimeters in diameter, but the fine sand is 0.6 millimeters, half that of the anthracite particles. The anthracite layer retains the larger particles and lets finer particles pass through. When the finer particles reach the sand filter with smaller pores, they will be retained as well. Water passing through the filter bed becomes clear. To enable better filtration, particles in each layer of the filter bed should be in descending order of size from top to bottom. Why is there coarse sand in the third layer and even bigger gravel in the fourth one? These two layers of sand and gravel are not used for filtration. They serve to support the layers of anthracite and fine sand above. Generally speaking, the thickness of the anthracite layer and the fine sand layer is 300 millimeters each, adding up to a total of 600 millimeters. Each of the two supporting layers is 150 millimeters in thickness, adding up to a total of 300 millimeters. Continuous filtration results in lots of particles being trapped in the anthracite and sand layers. Will the filter bed eventually become very dirty? After a filter bed has been used for a while, it has to be backwashed. The purpose is to clear the retained particles and keep the filter bed clean. First of all, compressed air is pumped in through the pipes to the filter bed to stir up all the particles retained in the layers during the filtration process. As these particles are lighter than the filter bed materials, the former float up to the surface. These sludge materials are the solid particles retained by the filter bed. After a certain period of cleaning, water is pumped into the pool. The water level is rising. When it reaches the top mark, the sludge flows away over the rim. When the cleaning process is completed, the pumping of air stops. The particles of the filter bed settle according to their weight. As sand is heavier than anthracite, it settles to the lower layer, while anthracite stays on top. In this way, the particles of the filter bed are rearranged to form a clean filter bed again, ready for the next cycle of filtration. Raw water, having been allowed to settle its contents in the clarifiers and filtered in the filter bed, is subject to dosing with some more chemicals before it can be supplied for human consumption. The chemicals are hydrated lime, chlorine, and fluoride. Hydrated lime is an alkaline material. What is the purpose of adding it to the water? After the process of clarification and filtration, water becomes slightly acidic. Alkaline hydrated lime is added to neutralize the acidity. Besides, many water pipes in old buildings are made of iron. Water tanks also contain iron parts. As iron is ready to rust in an acidic environment, alkaline hydrated lime is added to neutralize this acidity so as to prevent rusting. This is the chlorine room. These bottles contain toxic liquid chlorine. Liquid chlorine is evaporated through this apparatus and mixed into the filtered water. The purpose is to kill the bacteria in the water. Don't worry. All the chemicals added into the water are carefully calculated and monitored. The process complies with the standards laid down by the World Health Organization for water quality. Finally, a fluoride compound is added to the drinking water to enhance our dental health.